And this is how the city is to respond if there is an issue. So city's response to actions taken by a conflicted employee or upon a conflicted vote. And I didn't put all the sections here, but this is the specific section for an appointed board member. Upon discovery of an action taken by any of the city commissions, authorities, boards, or committees affected by a member's undisclosed substantial interest or a disqualifying substantial interest or a common law conflict of interest, the acting body shall, after consulting city staff and legal counsel, take the action it deems to best serve the public interest. The conflicted member who participated in the affected matter shall be disqualified from voting on the remedial action. And this has happened. Actually, not that long ago, we had a planning commission issue where the planning commissioner had a relationship with somebody that had an issue that came before the planning commission. Nobody realized it. They realized it after the fact. The board had to do a new vote on that, and that individual was not allowed to vote. And so the consequences of that violation, so violation by a board member may result in a private notice and warning, a private or public censure, or removal from office at the discretion of the governing body based upon the nature of the violation. So if there was a violation of this ethics policy, and city staff would take a look at it and kind of try and determine what the appropriate level of discipline is, and that would actually be a decision made by the remainder of the board. And if it was something that was really bad, that would be elevated to the governing body, the city commission, and they would make a decision. And I'm not sure that they have, I don't think I've seen them do that since I've been here, but it happens. So, again, for this board, I'm not really sure that there's too many circumstances where that would be much of an issue. And that is the end of ethics. So I feel like I flew through ethics. So we could start over and do it again. So that's really, that's kind of the board orientation that any board would get, kind of going through what the rules and procedures are, going through the ethics policy. You have a document there in front of you that I'd ask that you sign that just says you've received a copy of these ordinances. And that it doesn't say you received the training, and maybe I need to adjust that, but it does say that you've seen the ordinances, and if I could have that before you leave. I will roll into what would be more specific to this board, the Law Enforcement Citizens Review Board. So the Law Enforcement Citizens Review Board was created by ordinance number 20-11046. You should have received a copy of that in an email that I sent, and I believe if you don't have a copy in front of you now, I have some here as well. But this is the document that created the board. We're not going to go through every point of that today. We're going to kind of hit the highlights of the sections that I think are the most probably applicable. Some of these are things like how do you get appointed. I'm not sure that we need to go through that stuff. So I'm going to go through the board roles and responsibilities as outlined in that ordinance, and that's section 30-82. And I am going to read these to you because this is really the charge for this board. This is what you guys are here to do. This is the work that we're going to start doing as we move forward. So the first point there is to advise and assist the police department in policy development related to racial or other bias-based policing by police officers and the police department pursuant to the Kansas statute there and amendments thereto. You're to promote, advocate, and educate citizens about the existence and the purpose of the board. You're to assist the city manager, the chief of police, and the city commission in development of a racial or bias-based policing comprehensive plan. Point 4 is to provide recommendations resulting from board-initiated review of police department policies other than those policies addressing topics such as intelligence information, tactical plans, or resource deployment. So basically any kind of policy that we have that's not something that's covered by the Kansas Open Records Act, and I'm not going to go into detail about Kansas Open Records, but basically it's tactical stuff. So we don't want to talk in generalities about how we would kick down a door and arrest somebody. So,
If I could just add to that also, our policies that would be applicable for review, if you wanted, have all been on our SPD, the City of Salina police page since 2018. So all those policies have been on there and are on there. So if you take a look at those, and if you want further explanation, or if you, whatever you want to do, but you can look at those online.
yeah, and we'll provide links to those policies in an email, so that, if there is something that, if you're, you look through the policy and you see something you think that's, maybe we need to discuss that, we're certainly open and willing to do that and have that discussion as part of one of these meetings. So that would be something that you could say as part of other business. You could say, hey, I was looking through the policies and I saw this policy X, and I think we need to discuss that more. We could add that to the agenda at the next meeting. Or if that's something that you saw between meetings, you could certainly email me. And if you have questions about the policy that, you don't want to wait till the next meeting, I can certainly try and answer those questions or get them to Chief Nelson. But it is under your purview to review any of the policies. Basically anything that's not really public record. So anything that's on the website that's out there is available for your review and your comment, and we'll take a look at those things. And then the last thing is to review and advise the Chief of Police as to whether preliminary administrative determinations of the pre-disciplinary status of all complaints of excessive use of force or racial or other bias-based policing by police officers are supported by substantial competent evidence. And we'll kind of go into detail on number 5. I think number 5 is kind of the one that for these types of boards people seem to kind of gravitate towards, and those will be the cases that we've talked about in the review. And the Police Chief Nelson is going to go through kind of the process, the complaint process, and how we get those cases from a complaint and an investigation back to the board. So those are really the 5 charges of this board. And it's really kind of whatever the board wants it to be. So, if you have something that you feel like fits inside one of these points and you want to bring it up, we're certainly welcome to, you're welcome to do that. We'll look into those things. I think number 2, that promote, advocate, and educate citizens. If you've got ideas about how you want to get this board out, there's lots of different models of how these boards work, and we did a lot of work of looking at other boards and just to see, what they do. And we spent some time in Wichita with some of their boards, or with their law enforcement review board, to see how they have done things. And they've only had a board for maybe 2 or 3 years now. But there's lots of different things that people do. Sometimes they will do, go and have a board meeting at one of our community centers instead of having it here at City Hall. We're here at City Hall because the camera's here and it's all set up and it's available, and we can get the broadcast out. But there's nothing that says that this board has to meet here. It's really up to the board. If you wanted to take the show on the road and we wanted to meet and kind of talk about things at other locations, or try and get out in communities, we can certainly do any of those types of things. So it's really kind of this is a blank slate. We can make this board, whatever you guys really want it to be. And I'm kind of excited about actually finally getting started. It's kind of been a long time coming, and that's partially my fault trying to get prepared for all of this. But I think we're here, and we're at a point where we can kind of start to move forward and maybe make some progress. Anybody have any questions about the roles and responsibilities of the board?
I wouldn't mind adding that this ordinance here, that when you get a chance to actually look at it, and maybe for the next meeting, if you have any questions, but I just wanted to say that there's an awful lot of work that went into making this, and we really did look at a lot of different agencies and tried to pick what best fits our city, because there's no one template, because all cities are different, all communities have different issues, so you just can't reach out there and grab somebody's CRB and make it yours. It doesn't really work like that. But we looked at Topeka, Wichita, Riley County, Lawrence. We really looked at a lot of different places, but again, there's not one thing you just plug it in there. It doesn't really work like that. But if you have any questions about any of this, either now or later, by all means, that would be a good topic of a discussion as far as how we came to this, because it was months in its making to get to this point here, and actually to get us here together, it's probably a year in the making. So it's been quite a bit of work. Doesn't mean it's perfect, because it's not, but it's the best we came up with at the time. And definitely, if anything comes up, let us know.
Okay, so the next portion will be the kind of reviewing. I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
So here on point number 3, it says pursuant to Kansas State Article 22-4611A. And so is there a reference to this somewhere, or do we just need to Google it?
I can get you that.
So it says, assist the city manager, the chief of police, and the city commission in the development of a racial or other bias-based policing comprehensive plan pursuant to that.
Yeah, so that state law, and Chief Nelson may know more about this, that state law, it has requirements for 3 or 4, maybe 5 elements that are part of a comprehensive plan. It's not a requirement by the state, as I'm aware, but it is something that's recommended that we do. And so we have, and maybe that's something we can talk about at one of our next board meetings. We can bring you what we have for a comprehensive plan. Basically, what we have, it's not like a big, it's really just kind of a compilation of documents and reports. But I think what we'd like to have is a more comprehensive plan. Something that's more than just just a compilation of reports, something that we could actually take a look at and grow with over time. So we can certainly maybe put that on the next agenda to go over that plan and what the state law requires, and then kind of get your feedback on what you think, how we want to move forward with continuing to develop that plan. And Chief Nelson, you may have.
No, that's a great question. It's something that, like a lot of laws that come out of Topeka, they make them and then you've got to figure out what they want. So with that said, we do submit them annually, and there are 5 different areas that we have to reach, which we do, and we submit those as a comprehensive plan, but they don't approve the plan. I mean, I think you could submit 6 pages of whatever. They don't approve it. You just have to submit it, if that makes sense. But we do have a comprehensive plan. Certainly, I'm sure it could be better, but what I'm saying is, based on the guidelines we are provided, we fit what they want, the requirements that they ask for.
The state's it's kind of vague. I mean, it's
It
kind
is
of a vague
vague.
requirement, but we'll certainly, that's a good note. We'll send you out the state law and what's required and what we actually currently have, and maybe we'll just put that as an item of discussion for the next agenda. And any questions, concerns, whatever that you guys have, we can kind of maybe start there.
And then one follow-up is, with that state law, so is that kind of the basis for these other Lawrence and Topeka and Fort Riley plans that they came up with, or are these 2 kind of separate things?
Well, they definitely, that's part of how they came up with the CRBs they came up with, if that makes sense. I mean, you will, the 5 areas that they say you will do it, and you have to submit that you are doing it and show them how you're doing it as far as your comprehensive plan. So, yes. It would make more sense once we show you that, and I think that would be a very good topic for the next meeting, if you so desire, because it took a little while for me to wrap my mind around them wanting something, but then what you submit, they don't approve. They just acknowledge they received it. That's kind of how that works.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is the compliance, or the complaint process. Complain process. I forgot a T.
Lieutenant Feldman will be handling this portion, but I would say that these 2 that are in front of you, I made sure we brought these and put them all in front of you today. This does a pretty good job of explaining our complaint procedure, but what I provided to you for was just to know that we have had this, and we've actually had this since 2008. So it's not something new that we're just starting all of a sudden, how do we take complaints? We've had a process for a long time, and these have been printed since 2008, just right here. And they were obviously printed in Spanish too, for reasons. We have a fairly high Hispanic population is why.
Okay, we'll get started on this section. Like you know, I've already introduced myself. I'm Lieutenant James Feldman. I'm with the Salina Police Department. Little background information. I graduated from Kansas State University with a degree in sociology and criminal justice. I was hired by the Salina Police Department in 1994 and have been here a little while. I've served in the patrol division, field training officer. The majority of my career, I've been a detective, both in the criminal and narcotics section of the department. Upon being promoted to sergeant, I became sergeant of the detectives, and I also did some patrol sergeant. And then, once I was promoted to lieutenant, I became in charge of internal affairs and recruiting and hiring. So, we're going to discuss Section 30-93. Just a quick overview, since you guys do have it there. I don't want to bore you with everything. So this is the advisory recommendations regarding complaints of excessive force and/or racial or other bias-based policing. So this is what your responsibilities as a board are. The first is when fulfilling your role and responsibility as described in Section 3082, the preliminary administrative determinations by the chief of the police, you're going to see. That's pre-disciplinary status of complaints of excessive force or bias-based policing. So as we go through, any complaints towards police officers shall be reviewed by the board with the purpose of providing your advisory recommendations to the chief of police pursuant to the following standard. And the first is the conduct of any police officers against whom any such complaints are made shall be investigated by the Internal Affairs Office, which is me, and an investigative report prepared. The investigative report shall be regarded as confidential pertaining to an employee or employees of the city of Salina. And that falls under the Kansas Open Records Act. There we go. So then the chief of police, once I complete my report, I pass it on to the chief of police. The chief of police should consider the investigative report prepared by the Internal Affairs Unit and prepare a written preliminary administrative determination of the status of the complaint. And these are the 5 statuses or findings that he can list. And I'll give you a definition of each one in just a little bit. So the first is unfounded. It can be exonerated, not sustained, sustained, or sustained against policy. So once he does that, reads through it and decides what the finding should be, he'll include a statement of findings and conclusions with reference to the evidence upon which those findings and conclusions are based. The preliminary administrative determination of the status of the complaint shall be regarded as a confidential record pertaining to employee or employees of the city. There we go. Okay, so did I miss one?
Yep.
Okay, 1, 2. So in Section C, what it indicates that the chief of police will then, once we get a complaint, the chief of police will inform the staff liaison that we have a complaint and the anticipated date that it's going to be completed so that we can present it to you. He will then contact the staff liaison, will contact the board and set up when this is going to be reviewed at which meeting, or if necessary, a special board meeting can take place. So in Section D, what it indicates that the agenda of the meeting will describe the agenda item without identifying the complainant or the officer, and that's for privacy of all parties involved, and against whom complaint was made. And then when considering the agenda item, upon the motion, the board shall recess into an executive session to deliberate on the preliminary administrative decision. And it see if it is supported by substantial, competent evidence. The staff liaison and the chief of police and any other persons the board chooses to invite to participate as informational or advisory resources may participate in the executive session. The board will be presented with the confidential investigative report, the confidential preliminary administrative determination, and any other information that the chief of police used in coming to his decision. So you will hear why we have the finding that we have listed. Then during deliberations in the executive session, the board may ask questions. You may request other information relevant to your decision based on the preliminary administrative determination of the status of the complaint and to determine that it is supported by competent evidence. Upon completion of its executive session, the board shall take public action by a majority vote of a quorum of the board without identifying the complainant or the officer, again, to protect their privacy. And here's the options that you can choose. The first one is you make an advisory determination that the preliminary administrative determination of the status of the complaint is supported by the substantial competent evidence. Your second choice is make its advisory determination that the preliminary administration determination of the status of the complaint is not supported by that competent evidence. The third is you may postpone the advisory determination but pending its review for additional information. So you may ask, can we have a little bit more? Can you look at this a little further? So you can do that. You can also make no advisory recommendation or determination. So the way the section also reads that in event of a tie of the board, advisory determination by the board shall be deemed to not be sustained. So Section E states that after you guys make that determination and recommendation, the chief of police and the staff liaison will consult with the city manager and shall determine and document the final administrative determination of the status of the complaint. This termination shall be regarded as confidential also pertaining to an employee of the city, and the board shall be advised of the final disposition of the complaint during your next meeting. The police officer against whom the complaint was made will be informed of the finding, and the staff liaison shall create a letter to the complainant and notify them also of what the finding is. And Section F states that if the final administrative determination of the status of the complaint is either sustained or sustained against policy, the chief of police shall take appropriate action to correct any measures or mistakes that were made. And nothing in this section affects the rights of the officer. They will still have due process. They can appeal the action as it falls under the policies and procedures of the city of Salina. So what I'm going to discuss now is how we do complaints at the Salina Police Department. And this is taken from our general order, our policy manual, and it's the primary objectives of a internal investigation. And the first most is the protection of the public. And the reason we do that is the public has the right to expect an efficient, fair, and impartial law enforcement, and that we're doing our jobs. Therefore, any misconduct by our department has to be detected, thoroughly investigated, and adjudicated to ensure these qualities. And that is just for public trust. We have to maintain that. We have to do what's right with the public, for the public. But we're also there to protect the department. The department is often evaluated, and it is judged by our individual officers and their conduct. And it's imperative that the entire organization not be subjected to misconduct by one individual. We have seen recently that one person anywhere in the United States affects all law enforcement by their actions. And we want to make sure that we're operating correctly, and that protects the public, not only the public, but our department, so that we build that trust. Then we also have to protect our employees. Employees must be protected against false allegations of misconduct. Unfortunately, that does happen. This can only be accomplished through consistent, thorough investigative process. When I conduct one of these investigations, I conduct it just like a criminal investigation. I do it the same way I do those. And the last is correction of procedural problems. There is at times that, based on a complaint, we will determine that the officer acted within policy, but it was a faulty policy. or something that needs to be changed. And then we can, based on that complaint, change policy and make our policies more effective for us and the community on how we operate. So in General Order 1107.11, our policy states this: all members of the department are charged with the responsibility for courteously and willingly receiving any complaint that may be lodged against the department or any employee. And complaints will be accepted from any source, whether made in person, by mail, or telephone. Anonymous complaints shall be evaluated to determine the extent to which they should be investigated. So every member of our department is obligated to take these complaints and forward them through the right channels so that they can be looked at, investigated, and adjudicated so that we're doing our job properly. Yes.
I can add quickly that I've done this for 36 years, and we've came a long ways as far as taking complaints. I mean, when we first started, we did not take anonymous complaints, and now we do. We wouldn't take second or third party complaints, and now we do. So it's not that we're out soliciting complaints, because we're not, but we're just much more susceptible. We take them when we get them, regardless how. It makes it pretty tough. If it is I heard this through the grapevine, that makes it pretty tough to investigate it, but we do take any and all complaints we receive.
So this is how some of the complaints are received, and I'm sure there's other ways that I have missed, but we accept it pretty much anyway. We receive them by telephone, email, or online, in person, either to a supervisor, to an officer, or another city official, by mail. Department employees may see something that goes on that they do not think is right, they will report it also, or from another agency, such as KBI or the Kansas Attorney General.
And just to add to that, so, as board members of this board, you may receive complaints. I mean, there may be somebody that wants to bring a complaint directly to you. I mean, it's okay for you to take a complaint and either forward it to me or forward it to Lieutenant over there or to the police chief so that we can investigate it. But there is a likelihood that people will come to you because they may feel more comfortable coming to you to file a complaint. And we want people to be comfortable doing that. I mean, if there's something that's going wrong in our police department, we want to investigate it and get rid of it. So, there probably is an opportunity, and there may be people that come to the podium with complaints. I mean, we don't know how this is all going to kind of go, but we want to be able to be as open to taking complaints and investigating those and doing what we need to do on those, as we get them. So
once a complaint is received at the police department, this is what usually happens. Upon receiving the complaint, it'll be passed on to the Lieutenant Internal Affairs Office and also the Chief of Police. And once there, it'll then be decided who's going to investigate that. Now, depending on the severity of it, it'll be either myself, it could be another supervisor, a captain or such, depending on the severity. If it comes down to an excessive force complaint or a bias-based policing complaint, I will be looking into it. That'll be my responsibility. And also, people ask, is the person suspended or anything like that? That depends on the seriousness if they are put on administrative leave. Just because there's a complaint someone was rude or anything, we're not going to suspend someone or anything like that. We will look into it and determine. If it's a very serious one, then there is a chance for administrative leave. Now, the investigation of the complaint. And like I said, in law enforcement, an investigation is an investigation. So I look at it just like any other investigating, it being a criminal investigation or a complaint investigation. I do it the same way. And the most important thing is the impartiality and not making up your mind before you get anything. Because you go in there impartial and with an open mind on an investigation so that you're open to gathering all the information that is available to you. So then you conduct interviews with involved parties if possible. Sometimes people do not want to talk with you. And of course, I can't make people speak with me. if they're willing to talk with me, I get as much information as I can from them. Then I also obtain reports along with the beauty of it. All our officers, especially our patrol officers, have body-worn cameras. I obtain cell phone or phone calls to the police department, 911 calls, radio traffic, and any other video footage that could be available, such as someone's cell phone or anything like that. Nowadays, there's surveillance pretty much everywhere, so that's the nice thing. And then what I do, once I gather all that information, I compile a written report, and based on the information that I have, I come up with what my findings might be. Then I'll pass them on to the chief of police, and then he will review my work and look at the evidence that I have gathered. And the options are, he may agree with me, he may say, I want this done, do more further investigation. So here's what the findings mean. These are the options that I have. The first one is unfounded. And this is the investigation conclusively proved that the act complained of did not occur. This finding will also can be used if someone names an individual officer who was not involved in that. That's considered unfounded. And if you have multiple officers, you can have multiple findings. One officer may be unfounded, but then another may not be. So the other one is exonerated. And what that means is that the act which was complained about actually occurred. However, the investigation revealed that the act was justified, lawful, and proper under state law, police policy, and such. Not sustained, the investigation failed to disclose sufficient evidence to clearly prove the allegation that it did happen or did not happen. So we just can't say there's not enough evidence to say either way. Sustained, the investigation disclosed sufficient evidence to clearly prove the allegations made in the complaint. So we found that the complaint was accurate. And sustained against policy, the investigation revealed that there was a faulty policy or procedure. And that way we can adjust our policy, adjust it, how we do things, and operate in a better fashion. So when it comes to racial and bias-based policing, I listed 2 statutes through the Kansas state statutes. 224610C, which was amended in 2011, requires every law enforcement agency to have a racial or bias-based policing policy and contains specific requirements the policy must contain. And some of those include training and other stuff. The Salina Police Department has had a bias-based policing policy since 2003. And during that time, that policy has evolved. We have changed it to make it better and that we operate better. So we have had it for quite a bit. 4610D requires all law enforcement agencies to file an annual report of complaints alleging racial or otherwise bias-based policing with the Attorney General at the end of each fiscal year. Reporting is required even if no complaints are received. The report is due by July 31st. And I put their reporting date is August 1st through July 31st of the following year. And the reason I put that is we report for our accreditation a calendar year. So if we had a bias-based complaint on August 2nd and then one on January 2nd of the following year, August 2nd of 2020 and then January 2nd of this year, for the Attorney General, that would show 2. For our reporting, it would show 2021, 2021 if we didn't get any after year. So when you look at some of their records online, which you can look at every year's reporting, numbers may look a little different, and that's why, just because they're a fiscal year, we're a calendar year. So bias-based policing complaints received from the Kansas Attorney General. One of their guidelines is you go online or you can submit a complaint. It's a notarized complaint, they want it to be firsthand from the person that feels there was a bias against them. They don't want third-party complaints because they want to actually be able to get it firsthand from that person. So once they received a complaint, the Attorney General, what their procedure is, they're required by law to send a copy of that complaint to the officer who's complained upon and also the head of the agency that they work for. What they also do is they also send it, that complaint to the Commission on Peace Officers Standard and Training. You'll hear Kansas CPOST. That is the certifying authority for all law enforcement officers in Kansas. They certify that you are a valid officer. So it's sent to them. They will do an investigation, but what they're looking at is to see if there is any violations of the training that the city is, or the state, or each agency is supposed to provide. So that's what they look at. And then they make a decision. Once they've done their investigation, they have a board also that the investigator presents it to it and see if they confirm his findings. What we do is we get that complaint and we also investigate it and make sure it's not violating anything also, such as policy and procedures, and we handle it that way. So the Attorney General can look into it. They usually pass it on to another agency. So I want to give a quick word about CALEA, which is the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agency. CALEA was created in 1979 and is a credentialing authority through joint efforts of law enforcement agencies, major executive associations. These ones right here, the International Chiefs of Police, National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, National Sheriff's Association, and the Police Executive Research Forum. And what that is this is a national organization. What they do is they accreditate the agencies around the country. Not every agency. You have to apply and you have to go through a very stringent procedure establishing policy and procedures and that they meet national standards. And they review all your policies, all your practices, and decide if you meet their specifications. So, and in Kansas, there's a total of 371 law enforcement agencies. However, only 11 agencies in the state of Kansas are accredited. We've been accredited since 1996. I think we were the second agency in Kansas to be accredited. And so each year, our policies and procedures are reviewed annually for compliance with their standards. And what that also means, they do on-sites with their department. We had one in February or March of last year. They come, they review our policies, they review reports and make sure that we're meeting their standards and are actually doing what we're supposed to be doing. So you have to receive that accreditation and get it renewed, basically. So we've been doing it since 1996. So I tried to make it quick. Is there any questions that I can answer for you?
Okay, if there's no questions, we'll just keep moving here. The next item here is just the Citizens Academy. I think we're going to just have a review of what that means.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Officer Brent Rupert with the Salina Police Department, and I'm going to approach and hand out an item here for you. Just some little information on myself. I'm born and raised here in Salina, graduated from South High, attended Kansas Wesleyan, graduated from Wesleyan, and just like Lieutenant there, I got hired in '94, and the coordinator that represents the Salina Police Department with the Citizens Academy.
If I could preface a few comments before Officer Rupert starts. If in the ordinance, if you look at section 30-87, that's where it specifically talks about the Citizens Academy. I don't know, has anybody here attended the Citizens Academy? Any of the 8 here? Okay. The reason that's in there, that was at my request, but an awful lot of CRBs around the state do require, and they do require that you attend that. We chose not to require it, but the way it's worded is we are highly encouraging you to attend. We realize it takes a lot of your time. I mean, it's, how many weeks is it, sir?
The first one in the fall is our 11-week academy.
So it's 11 weeks of a few hours, 1 day a week. So it takes your time, and I completely understand that. But I think I feel strongly that the end justifies the means as far as giving you just the base knowledge of what police departments do, specifically what your Salina Police Department does on a daily basis. I think as far as the knowledge you gain, I think it's phenomenal. But again, it's not a requirement. You don't have to do it. We're just here to hopefully encourage you to do that if you so desire. And we do have a class coming up shortly. Officer Rupert?
The Citizens Academy is a joint venture with the Salina Police Department and Saline County Sheriff's Office. We just completed our 26th academy last year in 2020. The mission of the Citizens Academy is to build a better understanding between the citizens and our law enforcement through education and positive interaction with our officers. Chief Nelson, Sheriff Sullivan believe that the community and law enforcement partnership is important in providing services and meeting the needs of our citizens and our city, that our citizens are in our city and our county. When the community and law enforcement become cooperation partners, they form a powerful alliance. They're capable of addressing community issues and concerns. The goal of the Salina Police Department and the Saline County Sheriff's Office with the Citizens Academy is to provide members of our community with an inside look at the various units of our departments, the Police Department and the Sheriff Department. It's to help create a better understanding and communication between the citizens and law enforcement through education. And the Citizens Academy offers opportunity for individuals from all segments of our community to experience the firsthand decisions and duties that our officers face every day. As you can see there, I handed out a schedule there. I just met with Miss Davis out, provided her the same information. She had to go to another appointment this evening. And when we started this many years ago, we tried different nights, Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night. We stayed away from the Friday, Saturday, and Sundays, weekends with people being out of town. And we found out that the Wednesday nights were our biggest nights, that we've had as many as 35 people in our class, and we've had as little as 10 people in our class. She asked if another night could be determined, which if the board members are willing to do that, we could, if we're all going to be there, we can change it to Tuesday night or another night. We can discuss that. I can bring it back to talk to Lieutenant Kokanowski, who's the coordinator over at the Sheriff Department, and then we can coordinate the dates. But right now, we have it set up on Wednesday evenings. The first class, or the first academy that we have is in the fall, scheduled September 1st, and then to graduation's on November 10th. And then we take a couple months off, and we used to do the spring academy, which is the Advanced Citizens Academy, which the citizens that attend the class during the fall are automatically registered to go into the advanced, and it's only 8 weeks long. We used to do it in February, March, April, and actually March, April, May, and we found out that a lot of people are bored during January and February and the first part of March because it's cold out, not much going on. They want to get out and do something. So we moved the academy up, and therefore we left the spring open because we have graduations, we have spring break. We left those open so we didn't interfere with those, and it actually worked out better starting at the end of January and getting it done about the second week of March. And the various classes, as you can see on there, the first night, we have meet out the new training facility. Actually meet at the Sheriff Department on the first night. We get the badges done. We do tours of the departments of there, the tour of the jail. And I do apologize for the city manager, chief of police, sheriff, that you will see and you will hear things that you may not normally see or hear in your daily lives. And I always apologize for that because the people that we deal with, and when you go into the jail, you'll see things in there also. And so we want you to experience, and you do get to go out and do ride-alongs with the officers. We pitch in dispatch one night so you get to see what our dispatchers do. We explain all of our areas of the department with evidence, investigations, drug task force, traffic units, K-9 units. All that information is basically given to you through the academy. The 11-week academy, like I said, right now we're on Wednesday nights, but we can change that. The curriculum provides an opportunity for citizens to know more about our men and women who are protecting your community and why they make the decisions we make. And the Citizens Academy presents an opportunity for the citizens to ask questions, voice their concerns. Like I said, they get a ride along with the officers. And like I said, it also gives you the opportunity to go through the Advanced Citizens Academy, which is a little bit more hands-on stuff that we get you involved with. Anybody have any questions?
If I could just add, as far as the way it's phrased here, it's highly encouraged. I mean, I just say I think you would honestly learn so much as far as what we do. It is a foundation because it's 10 weeks, 40 hours just still. But talk about giving you a base foundation of what our officers go through on a daily basis. I think it would be very beneficial for each of you if you decided to do that. And I've instructed Officer Rupert to also, we've reserved 8 spots. So it doesn't mean all 8 are going to go, but I'm just saying if you wish to go in September 1st, starting September 1st, you'll have a spot. Just let us know.
If you have the applications there, if we could get those back as soon as possible, you could fill them out tonight, hand them to the chief, he'll get them to me. We do our background stuff on them, our investigation part of that. We want to get that all done so then we know how many seats to have. I know Kansas Wesleyan, Bethany College, they also have college students that are just getting their senior year that are looking and going into law enforcement, and we'd like to try to get them involved and get them to see what their job is before they go out and get involved with the job out on the streets. That can be done. We'd like to have those all usually done. If you need to wait a few, as long as we have them completed and turned in by the end of July, that gives us a good time frame. When I'm out on the streets and dealing with citizens, if I come in contact with a citizen that's not happy with me or not happy with the police department, I invite them to this academy. And they actually will show up and come to it. And then afterwards, they've came up and crying and hugging and say, I didn't know, I didn't realize, until you went through and you see all the stuff and the stuff that we pitch you in. In fact, one of the nights that is a really good night on there, you'll see it on there, is our simulator class. It's a use of force judgment simulator. And basically, it's a black room, dark, and it's got screens all around you. And that is the most realistic way that we can pitch you in situations that we face every day. And you talk to the screen, it talks back at you. And you have to make a decision whether you're going to talk to somebody or if to escalate and use some type of force, or if they come at you, you have to make split-second decisions, and that is the best way. And the people at first, they go through it, well, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it, and I encourage them, I need you to do this, and they do it, and they come back out, and they want to do it again, they want to do it again, they want to do it again. And then when we go to the advanced class, they actually want to do it more again because they get to see all that stuff, and they get the adrenaline gets going, and they get to actually see, and it's just a very, very, very intense class for 11 weeks and for the 8 weeks in the spring.
Just to add on that, it's called a Virtra 300, Virtra as in virtual, and it's much more, the 300 means 300 degrees of training. It's much more not shooting than shooting. It's not a shoot 'em up thing. It's decisions of when not to shoot, or if you have to use lethal force, which unfortunately sometimes we do. But trust me, it's not where you go in there and just shoot everything. That's not it at all, and that's not what it's designed for. And it's I don't think there's anything better out there right now, and I can tell you this thing costs almost $250,000. I mean, I don't know if that means anything to you, but it's that much technology, and it. In my heart, I believe it's the best there is out there, and we have it in Salina, Kansas, and I'm pretty proud of that.
And echoing the chief, the 90% of that training right there is basically verbal, talking to people, communicating to people, explaining things to folks. And when you're doing that, when you're doing it with the instrument of the training, if it's going right and you're explaining things, it'll go right for you. If you're not explaining things and communicating with people, it's going to go bad. So there's several different scenarios, from suspicious people to traffic stops to domestics to walking into a store to a bank. You don't know what's going to happen. I would really, really enjoy having all of you there. I guarantee that when you're done with it, in fact, after 11 weeks, the people are like, oh, it's over with. We want it to continue. We don't want it to keep going. We take off for a couple months for the holidays, and we finish it up in the end of January. This will be my last academy that I'm going to be participating in, as I'm going to be retiring in December. So Officer Lemon is going to be replacing me, and she's going to be joining us through the academy this fall. and she'll be taking over the coordinator for it. Thank you for your time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Officer Rupert.
All right, the next item on the agenda is a discussion of chair and vice chair, and I'm not anticipating that we make appointments. If you wanted to do that tonight, we certainly can, but since this is our first time, you just got showered with all the wonderful board information. If you want to go back and think about it for a month, whether you're interested in that, if you want to reach out to me, if you got questions about being the chair or vice chair, you want more information, feel free to reach out, but we will need to make that decision at the next board meeting. Somebody does need to be the chair. So just think about that. If you're interested, reach out and let me know. If anybody has any questions now about that, I'd be happy to, make something up, so. Meeting schedule. So this is something, there's really nothing in the ordinance that talks about when and how we meet. We're kind of anticipating, we don't see, oh, go ahead.
It does say at least quarterly. It's in
does
there,
it?
at least quarterly.
Okay, so at least quarterly, but we could meet more. And we kind of anticipate that maybe some of these, that one point about this board, about the function of the board and reviewing those complaint cases, we're not really sure that meeting quarterly will allow us to hit those on the right timeline. So we may need to think about doing special meetings for those. So maybe we have a standing meeting that's quarterly, and then we do a special meeting that would be just with the intent of going over a case as it comes up and as the investigation gets completed. So that's something that we don't have to decide how we're going to do that necessarily right now, but something we need to think about. Do you have any thoughts, I guess, about meeting more than quarterly, or is quarterly, you think, sufficient for now? We can, meet in a couple of months. If you have anything in the meantime, we can go through that. In that time, maybe we'll think of some additional things that we want to bring up. I anticipate we'll probably do things like the Citizen Academy presentation like we had tonight. There may be something that's actually kind of part of that Citizen Academy training. We might bring that to the board and say, okay, hey, let's go meet at the training facility. Let's show the board what it looks like as a board, and we can do that as a meeting. Haven't worked through all those things just yet, and but something we'll think about. So is quarterly, is that, you think, sufficient right now? We'll meet in about 3 months from now? Or do you think we need to do another meeting before that, or what are your thoughts as a board?
I like to meet before then, so I prefer every other month. to meet.
Okay. Anybody have thoughts on that?
I think that's just fine, yeah. Every other month would be fine with me.
Okay. Okay. So then the next meeting, we'd shoot for July timeframe. Now, this room, there's a very limited amount of time that we can get actually in this room. And the reason we chose 4 o'clock is we don't have any additional funding for the police department that comes in through this. So anybody that's an hourly employee, we're paying overtime. So, we kind of, does 4 o'clock work for the board? And maybe we wouldn't necessarily have to do that all the time, but is that a time that works? I know Mr. Grinter had some issues with that, and I don't want to, if that doesn't work, we will make it work at a different time. But for this room, the only 4 o'clock time slot is the first Wednesday of the month. So if that works, we can schedule it. And if we need to change that in the future, that is certainly something we can do. I mean, it's not a big deal to change it if that's what, the board wants to do. So does the first Wednesday in July at 4 o'clock in this room, would that be appropriate for the board? Okay, I'm seeing that looks like consensus on that end, so we'll get it scheduled. And for the next board meeting, we'll talk about the comprehensive plan. We'll see if there's anything else that we have. I don't believe we have any complaints in the works right now. So hopefully we don't get any. We don't want complaints. Don't get us wrong. We don't want to be doing the wrong thing. But if we do have one, that certainly we'll maybe talk about the process as we go forward. And this is this is a learning experience for us all, so it's not something we've ever done. So we're hoping we'll, improve it and make it better. And if you've got ideas and suggestions on that front, we can certainly discuss those as we move forward. You have something? Jim?
Just a little perspective on the actual racial bias complaints. We went a few years without any. So I guess I'm just saying that don't expect it, every month we're going to have something, and that's a good thing. We should be happy about that. But generally, it's 0 to 2 a year on a racially biased policing complaint, and then use of force 2 or 3-ish a year. When I say use of force, we have use of force every day. But when we have complaints about excessive use of force, it's 2 to 4 a year. So there's not, I just don't want to, if your expectations are we're going to have, and again, that's a good thing, we don't have that many of those complaints. But anyone we have, we will bring forth to you. And it's on a separate topic. If you can come up with anything you'd like specifically, anything from the police department about you want a topic or I'm not sure what we're going to call it, but something similar to what Officer Rupert just did, if you just, by all means, let Mr. Wood know the topic, or me, or any of us, we will make that the topic.
Yeah, and you'll have the opportunity, actually, the next item on the list here is other business, and that's really your opportunity to bring up any of those things. So at the board meeting, you can do it in between time for now, send me an email, whatever, but that will be your opportunity to say, hey, I noticed something in this policy, or I saw something happen the other day, and I wondered about this. Could we get some more information on it? And then we'll kind of try and work that, and then at the next meeting, provide some sort of a presentation or whatever. So if the first Wednesday in the month at 4 o'clock in this room works, we will schedule that for July, and then we'll go every other month and kind of just see where that takes us. And then we'll go on to other business. If there's anything anybody on the board right now wants to bring up, or any topics, any discussion, just anything, I'll open the floor up to you. Seeing none, we don't have any executive sessions, so I will go ahead and take a motion to adjourn if somebody wants to make a motion.
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right. That's your first official motion, and we're done.